And welcome to the Filmstein Podcast, a podcast where we are challenged with trying to articulate the love for art and storytelling. Today I'm joined by my melodic friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm glad everybody could join us because today we will be talking about Robert Wise's 1965 film, The Sound of Music. And I'm very excited to talk about this film here with you today because there is a lot going on in this film that I like. The major thing I walked away with after watching this film was how impeccably paced it was. I was really impressed on the structure and delivery of the rollout of the film and cracking of the characters, especially our boy Captain Von Trapp. I didn't realize just how effective it would be an hour into the film when Captain sees the people around him, his children, Maria, as people, as human beings, as these beautiful creatures. And I love how that's challenged with the presence of the Baroness. And so there's this kind of duality of why. I love this inverse kind of story we have with Maria leaving the abbey, becoming the governess, but not without a fight, of course, and the captain being forced in a similar situation to leave, but of course not without a fight as well, but still having to run nonetheless. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. I love the necessity of the musical numbers. They feel like the film's way of telling us the necessity of appreciating the world, seeing the beauty in the world, being playful, and Maria exposing this to the children's lives and obviously eventually the captain's life. It's really cool. And I, of course, love the parallel of the rise of Nazism infiltrating Austria while also learning about the importance of beauty. It's a really neat movie. I regret to not have seen it sooner. And I'm very curious what you think of The Sound of Music.
I saw this movie once in 4th grade, and it's always resonated with me. It probably helps that the songs are so popular and mainstream. The My Favorite Things song has been in commercials, especially around Christmas time, and Ariana Grande's rendition of the song Seven Rings has made it super modern. The Do Re Mi song was used in my own class to teach us about musical notes and whatnot. And I'm sure there's countless of references in movies and shows. This film has so much charisma and charm. The songs are timeless. They're catchy. They're uplifting. And one of the biggest themes in the movie is the power of music. And probably my favorite thing about it. Thematically, it slowly grows from music being used as a healing tool to it helping you find a person who makes you want to sing again, to it being used as a message or an act of protest. Music can speak what words can't. And just that reminder on how deeply important music is to humanity. Because not only do our characters in this film need music, but it just makes you think about how music permeates every aspect of life. And just how music becomes a symbol, specifically to their survival. I also love this idea that one single person can bring all this warmth and all this compassion to an entire household. I like what you said, that Maria brings this playfulness to the children. I love that. If that doesn't make you think about the impact you have on someone, or the impact you can have on someone, I don't know what will. I love that the story values love and family, and most importantly, courage. Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. There's also a non-traditional coming-of-age aspect to the film that I kind of like. There's some parallels between Liesl and Maria, their growth as young women that I really like. They both have these complex love interests. They both use music as a way to express their emotions. And at the end of the film, we see them transition into more grounded versions of themselves. They definitely experience some growth. And I also like this parallel between Maria's personal freedom and the obvious political freedom. Just as Austria is pressured to surrender to the Nazis, Maria is also being pressured to leave the convent. And I do like what you had to say about maybe Maria's version of that being inverse with the captain's story. I didn't even think about his change being drawn into a parallel of sorts. But both Maria and Austria have to decide if they will conform to these pressures or resist. I'm very curious how you felt about the characters. Julie Andrews kills it as Maria. She has this innocence and sincerity to her that I don't think we see a lot in films anymore. I had a hard time thinking of an innocent looking character. There's lots of innocent characters out there, but not quite as someone to represent this pureness that Julie Andrews brings. The captain, Georg, which I love the names of everyone in this movie, by the way. You have Georg and Sister Margareta and Liesel and Frederick. They're fun. But I love that the captain is reserved and stoic. Chris Plummer was an excellent choice. His performance of Edelweiss, or however you say that, is absolutely heartbreaking. At the end of the film especially. It's beautiful. The children for me are probably the harder ones to discuss, because while they have their own personalities, only Liesel is the one that gets developed in any kind of way. I don't feel the sibling connection that I think they're supposed to have. I'm not quite sure what my issue is with them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But there's also two other characters that I want to bring up. Yes, the Baroness and Rolf. The Baroness is clearly a non-traditional villain. She almost has this diverging path that Maria didn't choose and represents comfort. And then we have Rolf, who is this cautionary tale type of character. He represents surrender and this loss of innocence. He's clearly been seduced by this idea and just highlights the dangers on the impressionable youth, which is so ironic to his 16 going on 17 song. The setting of the film is stunning. I'm very surprised it was filmed on location. The cinematography is so pretty, so beautiful. We have some of the most beautiful wide shots I've ever seen. I like what you said about the pacing. It's great. It's steady. It's breathable. Especially for a 3-hour film. This is a great film. It's charming and hopeful. And I could see it edging on the side of corny or sappy. But I also think it's very emotionally balanced. And I really like where we land. I really like the ending, where we have this family who chose to stay together and stand up for what they believe is right, and having the courage in the face of oppression.
There's a lot to unpack there. I'll start from the back end because I'm very anxious to talk about the ending section. I think it's a little out of place to just run away in the face of some kind of oppression. Of course, how would you fight it? Yeah, I get it. But there is a lot of courage throughout the film. And it kind of ends on a cowardice note, I think, running to the hills. Of course, cinematically, it's very cool because Maria starts out in the hills and she's singing and she's having a good time being a free spirit. And she's late to some abbey convention. And at the very end, they were late running away. They almost got caught. There is one big inclusion that I think could have helped elevate the balance act that is somewhat at play here. I wish the Nazi invasion of this city was a little more chaotic, a little more dramatic, a little scarier, and especially at the very end when they do run to the hills. I can bend a knee on that, but we see them in the hills, and we go the extra mile of bookending the film, and we have these beautiful aerial shots of occupied Austria with men marching, tanks, whatever, what have you, just to kind of run that balance really home.
The thing I like about them escaping is just how sometimes that does take the most courage, walking away, leaving the situation. It can just be so metaphorical.
I'm totally with you, and I guess it may be more important to cut something to help elevate the necessity of running away, because they do treat the Nazis that invade the Abbey like Scooby-Doo villains. They're kind of just running around, and it's kind of funny, and it makes it a little stupid, a little too campy, maybe, and then they end with them just running some more.
What scary things did you want the family to experience before they ran away to the extremes of running away towards the hills? Because a man being around the corner of my house as I'm trying to sneak out with a full army of Nazis is pretty scary.
That wasn't a bad start, and we also have that really great shot of them, the Nazi guys, marching across some courtyard. We needed a shot of their might, their ability to siege this place if a fight was put up. No violence, just the potential of violence if the wrong thing was said.
Well, I think the wrong thing was said. The captain didn't answer to him taking the position and wherever they wanted to place him. I don't know, that scene where they're outside his house felt strong enough. The tension was there for me. And I guess it had been like a month since they went on their honeymoon, and a lot can change in a month, especially in these invading type of situations. Not saying that that's a cop-out for not showing us, but maybe that could explain.
I think the scene outside their house when they're pushing the car and stuff, it's very good, and it does kind of live on that line of what's going to happen. The film may have benefited from a less is more situation, because then we follow that up with them being chased like Scooby-Doo characters. Just showing them outside the house and being all intimidating. Seeing the guys march across that courtyard, and then seeing them all spread out in the convention area where they were performing would have been enough. But then they show us this weird chase scene.
No, that's an excellent point. And when they do their final number in the courtyard, their little performance thing, and they obviously have left, it's almost like we should have seen them in the hills already, singing, marching. I like that. And the only purpose to the courtyard Scooby-Doo chasing stuff is Rolf. Maybe there should have been another way to close his character arc, because it was necessary. We did need to see him lose himself to the Nazis. We did need to see Rolf make that decision to snitch on Liesel and her family.
Now, I like this point you brought up about Maria in parallel with Austria, and even to some degree Liesel in this coming of age story. Because for all we know, this is Maria's first love, much like Liesel's first love, Rolf. That's no doubt very tight storytelling. But I love this idea of this expectation and frustration of the Abbey for Maria to conform. And she's obviously very defiant, and begs the question of finding one's spirituality versus institutionalized religion, practice, and even this kind of godly duty of following one's narrative, following one's passion. But then, of course, they send her off to be a governess at the captain's house, and we're immediately challenged with, I guess, the central theme, and I think it's beautifully displayed. Because to your point about the children, of course, even in 3 hours, you can only develop so many characters so much, and the children are the first to suffer, but almost completely sensibly. Almost, we should have broken out of it. But we introduced them as this platoon, right? They're a unit of children. They have no personality, of course. They have to fall in line and listen and do their duties and chores and whatever, yada yada. And of course, that egg is slowly cracked and torn apart by Maria. And of course, they are kids. They have more personality than they want their dad to know. But when Maria's meeting the children, the captain says something along the lines of Maria needing to learn a little bit of discipline. And in a strange way, Maria learns discipline through defiancy, while at the same time teaching the children, to be playful, because there will be time to be an adult later, but also teaching the captain that life isn't all about just being an adult, that you need to loosen up too. And of course, Maria does that by showing how beautiful the captain's children are. And like I said earlier, I love this kind of mystery of, is it because he's infatuated with the Baroness, or is it because he is falling in love with the idea of loving life again through Maria, right? It's a great complexity.
I definitely love that too. When the Baroness is introduced, I couldn't quite tell if she was about to be someone I don't like. Because of the captain's spirits, I hadn't figured out who she is as a person until later on she has those conversations with Uncle Max, and you start gauging that they're not in love with each other at all. This is more of a comfort thing, of a status, wealthy marriage thing.
I'd even say preservation for what's to come, to combine two royal houses to kind of hold their own against the invasion.
You almost think about how dumb she is, that she could have had what Maria had. And I guess this is where the sappy comes out, not only in the film, but in me, that she's just simply not the right woman for him. This man needs some passion in his life that Maria is the only one that can provide for him. This parallel between Maria and Liesl was one of my favorite moments, at least performance-wise. And I guess what I mean by that is that the parallel is obvious through the musical numbers we have in that gazebo place in his backyard, which is what makes me think that this is Maria's first love. This is her first experience with a man, similar to how that was Liesl's first experience with a man. And almost like that 16 going on 17 song could reflect Maria's life too, about how they're both blank pages waiting to be filled by a man. Do you think the children situation would have helped if there were less kids? Because we sort of have this Maria kid. I'm not sure which one she was. I think she was the darker haired one. When they line up in the beginning, the first time we meet them, she's over there reading a book. But then we completely lose all of that.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like that when you meet the kids, but then you quickly find out that they're all kind of the same, with the exception of Liesl. Because I think you definitely kind of expect one of the kids to be a carbon copy of Maria, in being that one kid that is especially hard to get to. But Maria puts them all in their place when they're having dinner that one time. It's pretty immediate and maybe a little too fast, but it does kind of help balance the dictator captain and letting the children know that Maria's a little bit more on their level. She's going to respect them a little bit more. She's going to be playful with them. Because I'm with you with that brown-headed girl. It's almost like they gave her a little bit too much flair in the very beginning. Because she stuck out. But then, after the introduction, they are just a unit outside of Liesel. Which they run home, too. Especially with, like, the matching costumes, right? The music numbers. They're all very harmonic and group dependent.
Yeah, like the only one that sticks out is Liesel. She sings not out of tune, but out of the group. I'm not musically inclined, but it's like she says it right after everyone else says it to make whatever she's saying stand out, or she'll hit the higher notes in a lot of the musical numbers.
I also like the slow development of the captain's mind, where his mind is at. I don't know about you, but I start to become sympathetic towards him. His mind feels like it's in a different place. He's not being this controlling dad because it's in his nature. It's because he's just not present. He is worried about what's going on in the world. We see his great number when we're introduced to the Baroness, and the children just got finished singing for her. It's a great setup for what's to come. The big mic drop moment of him singing that as an encore, a song they asked for, the locals and the occupying Nazis asked for. He sings this kind of underground rebellion song that if you know, you know, but It's not overtly a national anthem of sorts, right?
It's so moving.
Part of me wishes, I don't know what we would do with Maria and the children, but part of me wishes that he got arrested while singing it and they just walked him off stage while he was singing it. I don't know. Maybe that would be corny, but the setup with, him seeing Rolf and having the Austrian flag at the party, and I just start to become really sympathetic towards his stoicness, his distance, when it feels like he's maybe resorted back to his general days of just being alert. And especially in retrospect, it makes it so much sadder when that big crack first happens with the Baroness and Marie and the children on the organ room, I think is where that was.
Yeah, and I guess she had just given him a big talking to and told him he needs to open his eyes. Like no one's ever spoken to him that way. And as soon as that happens, he hears his children singing. Almost like angels singing in the background when that light bulb comes on.
I'm sure everyone has someone like this in their life, their dad maybe, who's just so caught up in the news. What's happening on Facebook? What did this world leader do today? We know how hard it is to bring those people down to earth, to decouple themselves from maybe a scary reality, but a reality that can't control you like a mental illness.
That's an excellent point. He's got all this inner conflict that makes you feel sympathetic, but it just makes that transformation so much more earned. It's not a sappy transformation that a woman made him a better man, although I'm all for that, but it's just a bit more nuanced.
And I love the structure of it because it kind of happens in the inverse where he breaks, but then you learn a little bit more about him of why he was like that in the first place. And it's kind of funny, we do get a little bit of sap, if you want to call it that. I love that the Baroness smells it all. She's like a shark in the water.
She smelled it before I did.
She scares Maria away using her faith. When she never had like nun level faith to begin with, she's still trying to figure that out. That is probably one of the weaker parts of the movie. We don't really focus on her faith at all. But maybe there's something to that in a destiny sense. But we don't really have a lot of history on Maria and how she got set up to be a nun. But then again, when she goes back to the abbey, the nun queen says something to the extent that you need to follow your nature. That's God's will. So it kind of writes itself out of a corner. I like that. And I also like that the nuns are kind of a unit too. There's no individuality. And you might expect that with nuns, I guess. And it helps highlight Maria, obviously. But at the same time, they're really funny, especially in their musical numbers. Their musical numbers kind of sucked, I'm not going to lie. But when they were singing, you could kind of see an ounce of personality in each of them. And then when they stopped singing, they just kind of moved together as a unit again, just being nuns with no personality. You know what I mean? It was kind of cute.
Yeah, my only explanation to why we don't have this bigger focus on Maria's faith is a bit similar to what you said about that it's God's will to follow her nature. But with that speech Mother Abbess tells her, I kind of took it as, don't use church, don't use God as a clutch to not face your problems. That no longer becomes a movie about faith, but it becomes a movie about don't use faith as an excuse. That's not what it's for.
Yeah, there's something to that because you can see in a younger Maria her being sent to the nunnery school because she's a free spirit and she's a problem child. So you can kind of see that being instilled in her for sure. It's kind of ironic though because they're not afraid to hide by religion when the Nazis are chasing them.
To be fair, that's also Maria's only family that she could run to hide. It's not like she could go run to her mom and dad to hide or her best friend's house to hide. She only knows the Von Trapps and the nuns.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of options.
And the hills. She runs to all three. But I do agree with you. The nuns' musical numbers are the weaker of the rest of the musical numbers. I thought it was hilarious that they sang her How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria song at her wedding. I'd like to think that that's more ironic than how it was displayed.
Yeah, they definitely should have changed the lyrics a little bit. Keep the same energy and how are we going to deal with Maria? She's always going to be a problem. And then just kind of interject a little, oh, a man can solve her.
Or family solved a problem like Maria. Love solved a problem like Maria. And then don't proceed to call her a clown on her wedding day. It's funny. It is funny.
I think it was also the only song that wasn't diegetic because I don't think they were actually singing it. Behind the Gate, mind you, that's weird. They weren't part of the wedding. They were behind the gate.
And that's what makes me think it's more ironic than anything. Ironic in the sense that Maria's not a problem like that anymore. She has grown. She's settled down. She's more grounded. And they admire that. But this is how we still see her.
Or maybe this is their way to pass on the problem. She's your problem now.
That's funny. The only other musical number I couldn't quite place was the Lonely Goatherd song with the puppet show performance. I couldn't quite tell what the purpose of this song was. It just seemed like a song about a boy who finds a girl. It's very lighthearted compared to the rest of the musical numbers. And this is squeezed right in between when the captain realizes that his children are beautiful and Maria has brought music back into his life. And I think another one of the performances. So it's almost like we go on this kick of show and tell.
You have to assume the goat is Maria. The goat's from the hill. Maria's from the hills. The goat falls in love with a prince. The captain is royalty.
Is this where the Baroness was like, aha?
Yeah, maybe that's how she read it, and the rest is history. So I think the purpose is just to foreshadow pretty explicitly, because I'm with you, every other song has a bigger place in the story. The Do Re Mi song is simultaneously teaching the simplicity and beauty and how to sing, while at the same time teaching the kids how to be kids, how to play. The Lonely Goatherd song is maybe just a song about Maria. The goat sings and sings and sings and just sings some more, like Maria. Maybe it's just a little stranger because of how it's displayed. The puppets are weird. It's weird that it's goats. Goats with lipsticks. They make a new goat.
How did you feel about Maria and the captain's confession on the timing of when they fell in love with each other? I think she says, I fell in love with you when you first blew the whistle. He says, I first fell in love with you when you sat on that pine cone.
She would fall in love with him when he blew the whistle. A little freak.
Don't say that about Maria. She's innocent.
Well, I think this kind of plays off of your coming of age parallel, actually. With Liesel, they're experiencing this newfound tension, infatuation with each other, and they take it that extra sappy high school mile of, when did you know? Well, as soon as I met you, of course. It doesn't land completely because they're adults. The captain had to be broken down. Maria had to realize that she can still love God and a man.
Yeah, I guess it just threw me off because their love did feel more of a growth, but I guess it's just their admittance. Maybe there needs to be a phrase for a coming of age story for adult tier adults coming of age.
I feel you, because it's a little bit of a red flag. Maria falling in love for the first time at 30 years.
This is also 1965. Today, that's a definite red flag. 1965, I don't know what the rules were back then. Do you get a pass if you say, well, I was a nun?
I will add, before we wrap up here, that this film felt like it could blow up with characters and have all these names being tossed around and have all these subplots. And I really appreciate the restraint to have too many irons in the fire.
Yeah, we really appreciate a story that can be contained.
Right down to Rolf and Max and the Baroness. I'm with you. I wish we could have got Rolf's development a little earlier so we could have some kind of setup and payoff with his Nazism.
Mm-hmm.
We do get him saying Hail Hitler when he delivers a telegram, I think, and the captain's taken it back. And we do get this very brief confrontation with Rolf in his uniform and Liesel, and Liesel's just like, what the heck? Well, do you want to come by the house later? And he's like, I can't. Got duty. I wish there was some kind of altercation there. You know, I wish that was blown up a little bit more. Maybe even indicating some kind of point of him not totally on board joining the Nazi ranks quite yet. Kind of giving hope to the later encounter in the Abbey. Will they, won't they? Kind of thing. But they wrap up Rolf neat enough with the naivete and the attractiveness of, I guess, something new.
Yeah, well, they needed to seduce him into this idea. And it's not until later that he has been fully exposed when he has that moment of hesitation. Earlier on, when we do have that confrontation with Liesel, he's full in the seduction.
And I even appreciate not going too far with Max. He's just this money-hungry guy trying to get a part of as many pieces of pie as he can get. Aligning himself, of course, with the Baroness. And like I said, we didn't get crazy with the nuns. They were funny enough, kind of comic relief. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for watching this movie and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
I'm going with 15 mil. It's definitely long. I don't know how expensive shooting on location is compared to not. But it sounds more expensive, especially for 1965. We do have a lot of characters, a lot of moving pieces.
Well, it says here that the budget was $8.2 million in 1965. It's a good bit of money. And it went on to make $286 million for the time.
Holy crap.
And that's $2.9 billion today.
That's impressive.
And over on Letterboxd with 908,000 people, they weighed in at a 4.2.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this movie a 4. There's so much here that I really like. Everything from the musical numbers to the cinematography to Julie Andrews and Chris Plummer's performances, their love on screen, their arcs, and just how well balanced this movie is. I don't feel the 3 hours at all, and I like how hopeful it is.
Yeah, I think The Sound of Music is a solid 3. It's a great movie. It didn't do a lot for me, but man, does it have some tight storytelling. Funny enough, it reminds me of the very first Pirates of the Caribbean.
That is odd, yes.
There's just a flavor of structure and narrative that is working in many directions. I like the treatment of music, how it was used, the development of the captain and Maria and their relationship. I wish we ended on a little bit more of a dreadful note.
Of course you do. You wanted the captain arrested.
Or murdered.
Oh no.
But it's a great movie. So yeah, thank you again for talking about this movie here today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmsteins. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Wednesday and Friday with brand new episodes on all of our free feeds like YouTube, Patreon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the free spots to freeload on. Our next episode will be on the film 28 Days Later.
Is that the Cillian Murphy one?
So please look forward to that. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe, come write in, come request a movie. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins signing off.